I gave you my top 5 Kraken players. Now, will any of them make the Locked On Top 100? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey to the hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, actually working from the CBS studios here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, after the Amerigo Latam Cup. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we get into all of that, want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, as I just said, I'm at CBS Studios. I was here for a amateur ice hockey tournament, but worked my WNBA coverage. I cover the WNBA for CBS from the studio, so that was a lot of fun. Of course, in addition to covering CBS or covering women's basketball for CBS Sports, I will be reporting on the women's and men's ice hockey tournament at the 2026 Olympics in Milano Cortina, Italy. And super excited about that. And I got to call some international games this weekend. Again, I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But I've told you this before, everydayers, OGers, that we have a top 100 list. The Locked On NHL channel will be ranking the top 100 NHL players going into the 25-26 season. And I've given my Kraken players, I actually gave 7 players overall, but my ranking was Joey Daccord, Jared McCann, Matty Beniers, Brandon Montour, and Shane Wright. I also have Larson on that list. So the what's going to happen next is that from all of our selections, we have one master list, and all of the hosts throughout the Locked On NHL channel and network will have an opportunity to vote on the top 100 players. And at first I was like, yeesh, can I even name off the top of my head 100 NHL players? But some other hosts have these great little kind of ranking systems that we're going to be able to use. So I'm excited about that. And I want to hear from you. We talked a little bit about my list and going back and forth. And I've told you in the comments, for those who have commented, even today, I looked at that list and I was like, oh, because we'll go over some data points from NHL Edge. And I'm like, is that where I want Matty Beniers? Is that where I want Brandon Montour? I keep going back and forth. So that list is more of a list as of today than a final list. But again, I submitted names and now it's up to the rest of the channel. Is anyone going to vote for Seattle hockey players? And if they do, who has the best chance? And this did go to some degree into my rankings. Matty Beniers, Jared McCann, Joey Daccord, I think are the names that are known. Shane Wright as well. Shane Wright, I think I probably could have ranked him higher just with his name appeal across the NHL. I am not confident that every host understands the complexities of the games, the individual game of each Kraken player that I listed. And I think that's fair because I could say the same about me. There are going to be players where I'm relying on either stats from national reporters, data sets, or the eye test. If they're Pacific Division players, a little bit easier. There is some bias. I will say, I almost wish we could have ranked these as a division, all the division hosts, and then maybe even all the Western Conference hosts, and then kind of figure this out, because I've said it before, I definitely have a Pacific Division and Western Conference bias because I am the Locked On Kraken host and I watch Kraken games. So Of course, the Kraken does play throughout the entire league. And when we are comparing the Seattle Kraken, we're comparing them overwhelmingly to the Pacific Division. And we talked about what that could look like, and we'll continue to talk about what that could look like. But I don't know. I'm going to have difficulty here. So I want to know, who are your even top 10 NHL players? They can be from the Seattle Kraken or otherwise. And, tell me why. Who do you think deserves recognition? I think there are certain names we can all agree on. Top 10, top 25. Once we start getting to maybe 50, 75, and then, of course, the last 10 or so players, I think that's going to be really interesting, because I don't think there's going to be consensus. And I don't know where the Seattle Kraken will rank here, because I just, and we've talked about this a few different ways, a few different times. Do people who kind of follow national news storylines, do they really know a lot about the Seattle Kraken? I don't know. I do think that Joey Daccord is probably the player that will get the most shine on a national level. Maybe Matty Beniers. I think Brandon Montour, Shane Wright, Jared McCann, I think should, and we'll talk about why. But there's just a lot of different things that go into how the rest of the hosts are going to rank these players. And I have no idea. I also am not really sure even, what my ranking will be for players that are outside of the Pacific Division. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I almost wonder if 100 is too many. Like, should it be the top 50? I feel like there might be more consensus there. But either way, I think it's just meant to be a fun activity, something that we can talk about. So I absolutely will be bringing this up a few different times. And so let's talk about, what this Seattle Kraken team needs to do. And we're going to pull from a few different articles on NHL.com, because a lot of the questions, speaking of national media, the three questions, this was written for NHL.com by Kevin Woodley. And there are these questions that Kevin wrote about are questions that I have raised multiple times, including with my most recent appearance on the Locked On NHL channel with Gil Martin. I had that up as an episode earlier, or excuse me, last week. Can we score? What kind of goaltending are we going to get? And as Gil and I talked about, what are we getting from players like Mason Marchment? And so that's exactly it. I'm going to read you the questions that Kevin has for the Seattle Kraken. Again, you can find this on NHL.com. The article is entitled 3 Questions Facing the Seattle Kraken. Number 1 for Kevin is, can Mason Marchment help grind out more goals? Seattle was 16th in the NHL with 2.99 goals against, or goals per game last season, excuse me. This is what Jason Bottrill said to NHL.com. We have to find ways to funnel more pucks to the net and get more pucks to high danger areas for sure. That's a big part of why we went out and got a player like Marchment, who can help on the forecheck, but also around the net front. When you add those sorts of different players to our group, we think we have a different look. But is it really a different look? This is the big question mark that I continue to ask. Again, Gil and I talked about it. I've talked about it on the show before. Is it a new look? And even if it is a new look, is the new look enough? Second question, another question specifically, I've talked about this on the penalty kill, but will special teams improve? Kevin writes, the power play ranked 23rd and the penalty kill ranked 21st last season. Our special teams has to be better, Botterill says. We certainly have opportunity for growth in these categories, and we have to show improvement to have success. But he talks about also younger players, quote, understanding the PK and how the league is run. And that's where utilizing a Matty Beniers or a Riker Evans, of course, who agreed to terms with the Seattle Kraken. We talked about that. It just continues to help their growth. That's Botterill talking again, as young players. And that eventually allows our team to improve. So from that, I want to stay on that quote. If you listen to the women's hockey report, you know that we talked about the New York Sirens and the youth movement happening in the greater New York area, but very specifically in New Jersey. Don't at me. They play in New Jersey. They're a New Jersey team. I digress. That's been the last 4 seasons for the Seattle Kraken, is the give and take of having veteran leadership. There's, especially in the early years, we kept hearing, we need guys with Stanley Cup experience. We want guys with Stanley Cup experience. We're going and getting guys at the trade deadline or in the offseason with Stanley Cup experience. Then you have this quote that Botterill gives. And given what we saw last year, and a lot of you in the comments talking about Shane Wright needs more minutes. He can't get more minutes because he doesn't have more minutes. He's not getting opportunity. Matty Beniers, like, how short is the leash with him? Players like Riker Evans, we've seen have a reset. Ty Cartier, even Joey Daccord to an extent. Are these guys really going to level up and grow into the players that we think they can be? Shane Wright obviously is top of that list. Then you have a player like Yanni Newman, who we're expecting to make the team out of camp. You have a player like Berkeley Catton that I think is going to have a really great chance to make the team out of camp. So this Jason Botterill wants our young players to understand how the league works on special teams. That's so interesting to me. I feel like we can unpack that a lot more, and we will. But I want to move on to Kevin's number 3. Can goalies other than Joey Daccord deliver wins? That's the question. And again, has been the question. Only 2 teams, the San Jose Sharks and New York Islanders, got fewer combined wins from goalies other than their number 1 last season than the Kraken's 8 from Philip Grubauer. His late resurgence may be a sign they can expect better this season. But what did we keep hearing from Philip Grubauer? That he needs consistency. He needs repetitions. I would not be surprised if the crux of letting go of Dan Bylsma had something to do with the decision that was made regarding Philip Grubauer. So much conversation. Will he stay? Will he go? Will we buy him out? Is it even possible to trade him? The Seattle Kraken, Jason Botterill in particular, early on since being named the general manager, has given the stamp of approval for Philip Grubauer. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Of course, Matt Murray was also signed, part of that move, as we've heard from Jason Botterill and have talked about every day, as you know this. We've talked about that this has to do with the Olympics, the aforementioned Olympics. I will be at these Olympics. I'm so excited. The details are starting to come in from my assignment. I think I may have told some of the everydayers, but I'll save it until I get more detail and tell you exactly what I'll be doing at the Olympics, in addition to the Locked On Kraken coverage and the Women's Hockey Report. We've got some things cooking for the Women's Hockey Report show that I think you're going to be excited about, especially if, as Sound of Hockey said, if you're rooting for the Kraken, you should absolutely root for PWHL Seattle. And I do think that's true. I also kind of cringe at those story or headlines, because you should root for PWHL Seattle because you want to root for PWHL Seattle. Like, root for women's hockey because you want to root for women's hockey, or root for women's hockey because women's hockey is in Seattle. But anyway, I do appreciate that Sound of Hockey, Circling Seattle Sports in particular, are doing a really good job of covering PWHL Seattle as they get ready for their inaugural season. And so I'm not talking about any of the Seattle outlets. And as someone who comes from women's hockey and transitioned over to the men's side, covered women's and international hockey, and then came to the NHL side of things, I just want us to let women's hockey be women's hockey, right? That's just like we're going to let the Seattle Kraken be the Seattle Kraken. But going back to my point at the top of this segment, I just don't know. And I know some of you have commented this on YouTube in particular. I don't know that I trust the national media or media outside of Seattle to understand Seattle, because I struggled to understand Seattle. I struggled to come up with 5 names that I thought could be good candidates for our top 100 list, our Locked On top 100 list. So I don't know. All of that to say, I don't know. But these 3 questions I think are going to be interesting. And the 3 players that I think have the best chance, there's another NHL.com article that I want to go to that addresses NHL Edge stat leaders for Seattle Kraken. Now, you may remember we've had Allison Lucan on the show specifically to talk about NHL Edge stats. If you don't remember that episode, please go check it out. Anytime we have Allison on the show, it's great. And actually, we didn't have her on the show at all last year, and we got to fix that on the immediate. But the thing that Allison and I talked about is you can measure a lot of different things, but why? And I'll be honest, some of the stats that were pulled for the next article that we're going to talk about, which again, maybe can help us make a case for who can make the top 100. I just don't know if these are the type of stats that your average person really takes into account, trying to consider who are the top 100 players in the NHL right now. We'll talk about that as we continue on today with today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, folks, we're back here for another segment. But before we do that, I want to let you know that our annual listeners survey is back again. And I have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. And we've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners. There's a QR code on the screen if you are watching on YouTube. If you are listening on audio, when it is safe to do so, go check out the show notes because the link is there. Our listeners we put together a survey to learn more about our listeners, you, and we want to make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like. Like, do you like that we have a women's hockey show? But maybe something that can be improved is expanding that show to a full show and not just a Saturday show, just as an example. We want you to answer questions about our advertising as well. So go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts with an S.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes, and there is a QR code on your screen right now. Thanks for helping us out. Okay, so I want to talk about this, this NHL Edge data. Erica L. Ayala here from CBS Sports headquarters in Fort Lauderdale. I worked from the office today, not remotely, to do my WNBA coverage. But let's get down to these games or this list for the Seattle Kraken. And NHL Edge is, again, something that is new that the league is really pushing. and they share these stats. Now, how helpful these stats are, again, are questionable, but it's, data sharing and data visualizations, etc., things of that nature. So this is the NHL Edge data here. Top skating speed below 50th percentile. Speed bursts over 20 miles per hour below 50th percentile. Skating distance 54th percentile. Top shot speed 58th percentile. Shots on goal below 50%. That's important. Shooting percentage, 58 percentile. Goals, 58 percentile. Offensive zone time below 50%. And that is also reflected here on this chart. You can kind of see the further out they are, the higher the percentile. The Seattle Kraken are not a team relative to their peers that is rating high in some of these categories. Now, how important are these categories to wins and losses? You can argue things, including, they have skating speed, skating distance, shot speed, shot location does make a lot of sense. Shots on goal below or at 51 percentile, shooting percentage 58th percentile. For the goals, we can see high danger shots below 50th percentile, goals below 50th percentile in the high danger areas. So that's some of what Botterill is talking about. Then you can go to the mid range. Shots on goal below 50th percentile, goals in the 70th percentile, shooting percentage in the 87th percentile, long range, 87th percentile, for shots on goal, 90th percentile for goals from the long range, and 83rd percentile, on shooting percentage. This is probably the one that makes the most sense to me. Zone time is also kind of interesting. All strengths, we can see we're below the 50th percentile in all three zones. At even strength, below 50th percentile in all three zones. On the power play, below 50% in the offensive and defensive zone. Spend a lot of time in the neutral zone on the power play. And the penalty kill, we knew this was going to be below the 50th percentile, right? And you can see the percentages here. They spent 60.7% of time on the penalty kill in the defensive zone and only 26% in the offensive zone. So those last two, I think, make more sense. But there's an article here that has 3 skaters that are listed because of their stats when it comes to NHL Edge. And one of the players, and the top player here, Brandon Montour, he is listed 4th or ranked 4th among NHL defensemen in shots on goal at 231. And in goals, he has an NHL career high of 18 this past season. 90th percentile or higher at his position in several stats, 15 of them. But this is where, knowing that Brandon Montour can reach the 90th percentile or higher is interesting. We see upward of the 96th percentile. That's with top skating speed. But how hard you skate or how fast you skate, how does that translate into the goals, quite literally, that are scored, but also the goals or the metrics that the Seattle Kraken are trying to meet? And that's where I think the conversation with Allison Lucan comes in, because yes, you might see this and you're like, whoa, Brandon Montour ranks in the 90th percentile or higher in 15 different categories. But again, it's skating speed, 22 plus mile per hour speed bursts. I mean, if you can help me translate that, great. Top shot speed, okay. 90 plus mile per hour shots, okay. High danger shots, mid-range shots, long-range shots, that makes sense. But some of these, I'm just like, okay, like just because you toss out a number doesn't necessarily mean that it is useful, when it comes to analysis. That's kind of how I feel about some of these. So yes, great that he lists in the 90th percentile or higher. And are the stats helpful? Do they tell the story, or can they help tell the story of what the Seattle Kraken are trying to do? I mean, I don't know, to be determined, I suppose. The other player here is Jared McCann. He averaged 29.5 goals per season. He's averaging 29.5 goals per season in his 4 completed season with the Kraken. That's second among forwards last season in top shot speed. So he's shooting the puck hard, and he's in the 80th percentile in 90 plus mile per hour shots with 8. He ranked in the 99th percentile among forwards in the 80 to 90 mile per hour shots, 92. He finished in the 95th percentile at his position in average shot speed. So, maybe if you couple these stats with whomever you're trying to pair him with, does this help tell a story? Maybe. But that's again where the conversation with Allison Lucan and how helpful the NHL Edge stats are comes into play. And then there's finally Joey Daccord. And Joey Daccord's mid-range save percentage is what Kevin wanted to talk about. He ranked 7th in both mid-range saves, Joey Daccord did, with 408, and long-range saves at 360. So I guess you can say that Joey Daccord is either not seeing a lot of shots in close quarters from just looking at this, or that he doesn't make those saves in close quarters. And, you can look at NHL Edge data to figure that out. So if we take a look at Joey Daccord on NHL Edge, which I will share with you right now, we can figure out, is this that he is really good at specific things, or, is he not? So goals against average, he's below the 50th percentile, 68th percentile for overall saves, below 50th percentile in high danger save percentage. So there you go. There could be a lot of reasons for that. I think like rebounds, for example, could be a part of it. But again, what does this data tell us? High danger saves, goals against, 81 goals against, saves in high danger areas, 314, shots against 395, that's in the 78th percentile, and save percentage in the high danger area, 795. The league average is 803. So he's not completely off, but I mean, again, high danger chances, they come for everyone, Joey. But, is this data helpful? I don't know. I think you can definitely make a case one way or another about a few different things here. But that's why the conversation I thought with Allison was so illuminating, because it's like, beware of how you're using this information. Like, I asked a few questions, but for me, I would have to go to other data sets to help to explain or even kind of support what NHL Edge data is sharing. So this Seattle Kraken team, can they get anyone in that top 100? I think it's honestly going to be tough. I don't think that the Locked On NHL hosts are going to be kind to our Kraken. So just prepare for that. Because it could definitely be a thing. First, so coming up next on Locked On Kraken, I want to talk about 3 things, as in, what are the 3 questions that an NHL.com writer has about your Seattle Kraken? Before we close out the show, I want to play a clip from the Amerigo Latam Cup. This is the men's division championship, Division 1 championship between Argentina and Greece. I was on the call, and here's what it sounds like when I'm calling a hockey game. One-timer by Mayor. And then there it goes for Ioanu. Goal! A goal by Greece. Might have been some friendly fire by Argentina. But they score on the power play on a 5-on-3. And just like that, we have a tie game. Suarez now gets to it. Shot. Goal! A chance for Chubbs here. Shot. Goal! Argentina! Shot in. Bodies in front. Wow. And Goofies will get credit for another goal here. But this is a tough one because it hits a player for Argentina. That Hayek now on the right side. We're goal! Argentina! Goofies. Shot. Goal! Greece. And that's a hat trick. Mayor and Argentina, of course, are trying to get this shot up. They won't do it. Greece wins. Greece wins. And so that was me calling games for the Amerigo Latam Cup. That's also why my voice has been raspy for the last few episodes of Locked On Kraken. But I've been very grateful to call hockey games now for really going on 10 years next year. I've been covering hockey for 10 years already. Again, started in women's, then international, college, and NHL through the Kraken. Called an NHL game back in 2022 after coming back from the Beijing Olympics. And so that was a lot of fun. But and that will do for our show. Remember, we are in the off season, so we're not coming at you every day, but we definitely will have episodes. We've got to talk about the giveaway schedule in a little more detail. I want to continue talking about the top 100, and I want to hear from you. Who are your top 10-ish? Or if you have 100, let me know who your top 100 players are. But who do you think is a non-negotiable, no matter what team, no matter what position, they deserve a spot on the Locked On Top 100? I want to hear from you. We'll continue having this conversation as the votes come in from the hosts. And of course, once the final list is made public, we will talk about it again. A reminder to be kind to yourself. That hopefully will allow you to extend kindness and grace to others. We hold fast, we stay true, and we say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. I, Erica L. Ayala, will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.